What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some Psybient, and we're going to listen to some more Carbon Based Lifeforms for the first time in a while, and we're going to go back to what is technically their first official album, which is to say Hydroponic Garden, though they have a release that on their Discogs page is shown above that, which is to say a release under the name Notch, which I believe was the two guys that comprise CBL with another friend of theirs, but I'm not quite sure why it's listed that way, because normally, Discogs shows an artist or group's catalog only under that name, and then if they have aliases or if they were part of other in-groups and so on, then there'll be links to those pages on that particular group or artist page. But in any case, I think this is their first proper album. It came out on Ultime, one of the most famous and lovely Psybient labels. It came out in 2003. Now, I wasn't knowledgeable about or into what has become known as the Psybient genre then, though I was familiar with some Psybient, which is to say I was already a big fan by then of Astral Projection. Again, my brother got me into Goa Trance like late 96, and Astral Projection was certainly a name and a group that I came across pretty quickly. And on their old school 90s albums, Astral Projection would almost always have one down-tempo tune as the last track on the album. So I had heard some really great Psybient tracks up until that point, but I was still very limited or ignorant about the genre that was becoming a more notable style. And by the time you get to the late 2000s, that's when I began to discover Psybient artists like Carbon Based Lifeforms, like Solar Fields, and then labels like Ultime and Cosmic Leaf and so on. And then I sort of took a headfirst deep dive into the genre and began making my ambient excursion mixes. So the point is, Carbon Based Lifeforms is one of the earliest groups I began avidly following as a Psybient output, or a Psybient production team, or duo I should say, though again it was a few years after they had started making albums. Now, I still think their first two albums, Hydroponic Garden and World of Sleepers, are the most legendary, in part because it was their most acid-heavy Psybient. Not to say that a 303 hasn't been heard on their more recent albums or more recent tracks, but those first two albums were just this crazy blending of down-tempo ambient with acid music, and I think a lot of people were very fond. A few years back, there was a label called Blood Music that put out some vinyl versions of their albums. I actually got a copy of both of those albums, but they had a lot of surface noise and scratches on it, like even straight out of the shrink wrap, so I ended up selling them because when it comes to ambient, a lot of surface noise, it's very noticeable, whereas if you have like a loud techno track or a gabber tune, some surface noise here or there, it doesn't register with the same problem. So, long story short, this is an album that has become one of my favorites, but I didn't know about it in 2003 when it came out. It took me a few more years to discover them. In any case, we're going to listen to a tune. I want to make sure I get the numbers right. But yes, this is from Hydroponic Garden, which again is 2003, and the track is called MOS 6581. And I'm pretty sure that I've used this in a number of mixes. In fact, I could probably check right now. So let me just do that. Okay, so... Oh, whoops. So yes, Pale Light and Illustrious are two mixes that I've used this track in, and they're both in my ambient excursion playlist for those who'd like to hear this track in the context of a mix, but let's hear it. This is by Carbon Based Lifeforms, MOS 6581 from their Hydroponic Garden album 2003 on Ultime Records.
The race course at that edge is 30 kilometers. Its powers are attributed to the winning force. Spectators.
It's a beautiful tune. I love it. I will say that main melody, the one that comes in first, is just sort of like smooth and reflective. It makes me think of, pondering your life or looking out from a hilltop onto some, valley below and thinking about all the lives and the time that people have been there. Then there's that faster, more like shimmering type of melody that adds a little bit of luster, a little bit of drama. And then there's that expansive, like winding, almost like metallic style melody that comes on top of all three of them, or on top of the other two. And so once you get to the latter stages of the tune, it's this really melodically dense track, but they all interact with each other really well. So you get this melodic sandwich, for lack of a better word. I didn't remember so much the sirens. Like once it started, it was like, oh wait, that's right, there's some like emergency vehicle style sirens, which you wouldn't normally expect, or seems maybe like an odd choice in a space explorative type of Psybient tune, and yet I think they work well and they lend a technological element to it. The idea that, even if you're hearing this tune as being transported to some other planet, some other star system, some other galaxy, then perhaps there are forms of technology and infrastructure that would not be terribly alien to us. Or if you view it down here on Earth, the idea that amid the natural beauty there are human endeavors and technology and life-saving mechanisms that are indicative on some level of our intelligence and advancement, though perhaps in another way indicative of some of the dangers of being a sentient species. So I think it fits well, even if it's a bit of an unusual choice. And obviously those voices, they're almost like echoed and they're scrambled, sped up, slowed down, and it feels like you're getting a corrupted and incomplete audio log of some maybe distant civilization. So I love the way it all comes together, and it has this groove to it. Again, it's down tempo. It's not completely ambient. It's not true ambient where there's no kicks or drums of any kind or loud engine vehicles. But at the same time, it's not what I would call trance-like Psybient, which is to say some Psybient has enough tempo and a steady enough like 4/4 kick that it's almost like slowed down progressive trance. And indeed, some Psybient albums on Discogs will have the listing like ambient progressive trance, because again, it's a bit in between. So it's not fully down the like danceable trance style Psybient, but it's not completely percussionless Psybient, which again, like some Solar Fields I'm thinking of, especially he did one album, then he did like a remix album of it. And on the remix album, a lot of the tracks are just true expansive ambient, just pads and melodies on top of them, no kick drums, no hi-hats, and so on. So it's a bit like in the middle. It has a syncopated beat and a very slow beat, but it does have a driving beat to it. Side note, if you weren't aware, it was a one-off project so far as I know, but the two guys who are Carbon Based Lifeforms teamed up with Solar Fields, and they put out an album under the name TSR, and it's an amazing album. So if I haven't reacted to any of those tunes, I think I'll have to look into that. We'll see. But yes, more Carbon Based Lifeforms to come. I'm going to try to do some reactions to Dense, another one of my favorite Psybient artists, so I'm going to try to get more Psybient and ambient reactions going again. It was something that I did pretty regularly a while back. They've fallen off, but they will be coming back with more regularity. And for those who do follow my ambient excursion mixes, good timing, Luca. There will be one coming back in this next week. It's been at least a couple months since the last one, and before that, I think it was like several months. So I'm going to try to get those back to a more regular rhythm as well. So lots of stuff coming on the channel, including related to Psybient specifically. Let me know what you think of this tune, and I will see you next time. Peace.